Hi everybody, my name is Jim Graham and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Cage Live here on MMA World and MMA UK. I will be flying solo today as your host of the program, and again you can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, and you can also check me out on Instagram at TheJimGraham. On today's program I'm going to talk about UFC London. I'm going to talk about One Championship Iron Will. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Invicta 28, and also coming up this weekend is going to be Glory 52 Kickboxing, which is going to be live from Los Angeles on UFC Fight Pass, as well as streaming on ESPN as well. So once again, I am Jim Graham. Thanks to everybody for joining me here on MMA World and MMA UK. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please write down in the box below. Since I'm going solo, would really love the back and forth with everybody watching today, taking on your questions and comments, and we're really try to make it interactive as well. And again, if you're watching on here, or if you ask me a question on my Twitter, again, at Jim Graham, I'll take those questions here for about the next hour, talking some mixed martial arts with everybody. So glad to have everyone on aboard once again. Took a week off last week, pushed it to this week because we kind of had that flexibility with no really major mixed martial arts events, but doing an event this week because next week's a really big week, obviously with the UFC and Bellator both having some big time events, so we'll talk about those next week, getting ahead of myself. But super excited to be back here on the program with everybody, and of course my normal co-host Kayla Beatty. She's off covering some different events around the Southern California area, so she wasn't able to be on the broadcast here this afternoon. So with that said, let's get started here with this week's program. Of course, one of the big headlines for a lot of people, one of the things I want to start with, of course, is Darren Till. Huge announcement coming for that young man as he was looking to fight at UFC Liverpool. In fact, he actually was supposed to fight here at UFC London. They were trying to get him to fight there, but now he'll be fighting this summer for UFC Liverpool, and they finally named his opponent for that event, and it looks as though a fight we thought we would get for UFC London, which I will talk about here, kind of gets, you could almost say, rescheduled or officially confirmed, is going to take on former two-time title challenger Stephen the Wonder Boy Thompson. Will be set, and that's going to be the main event of UFC Liverpool. That was just announced about 2 hours ago, so some of you may have heard the news right here on MMA UK. Some of you may not have heard the news yet. Maybe you just got off of work, or maybe you're still at work, and so you haven't been able to check MMA UK out to see the latest news on Darren Till getting the fight he wanted in his hometown of Liverpool, England, taking on, again, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Again, that event's going down towards the end of May, May 27th at the Echo Arena in Liverpool, England. Of course, Darren Till is coming off the biggest win of his career, knocking out Donald Cerrone last October over in Poland. And of course, Wonderboy Thompson, I believe, was his last fight against Tyron Woodley? You know, I may have to double check that. I believe that is correct. No, that's right. Stephen Thompson beat Jorge Masvidal at UFC 217 this past November. So he is coming off a win. That's right, he did fight. I remember that fight. Now that I'm thinking about it, yes, I do remember him fighting Jorge Masvidal, and I thought beat him pretty thoroughly in their 3-round affair back in November. So for this main event here at UFC Liverpool, I think it's a great main event. Obviously, Darren Till's coming off a fight where he was the main event in Poland, and Stephen Thompson's headlined quite a few cards at this point in his career. I got a question from Peter asking, what is my prediction? And this is an early prediction. I mean, this is now 2 months out, so my feeling would change. Darren Till is a guy that definitely likes to push the pace forward. He really likes to take control of the center of the cage, push forward, does use his range well, but definitely is a guy I would say is more of an aggressive fighter. Now, Stephen Thompson is definitely very much a counter striker. He's very much looking for that one shot. He is a point fighter and is very comfortable striking from the outside. So will Darren Till be able to still be aggressive and avoid the counter strikes. That is the key for me. And I'm not sure. Stephen Thompson has befuddled many a UFC welterweight, and I'm not saying Darren Till has no chance, but I'm not sure if he's dealt with anyone that fights that type of style, that, kind of fights from that karate stance. I think that's a really big deal. It's something you don't see a whole lot. And because Stephen Thompson is a unique individual, it's very hard to bring in somebody to emulate Stephen Thompson. You can't just pick a run-of-the-mill guy and just be like, emulate Stephen Thompson. I think it might be a little easier to find someone that can emulate Darren Till's style for Stephen Thompson to counter. So I would say early prediction, I'd probably pick Stephen Thompson. Maybe something along these next 2 months will change my mind, but just early prediction, I would probably pick Stephen Thompson for the win. I know a lot of listeners coming from the MMA UK site probably are unhappy with me about that, but that's my honest, unbiased opinion. I just feel, as of right now, 2 months from the fight, my early prediction would be Stephen Thompson, but that may change. Of course, as everyone knows, if you've been watching Beyond the Cage for, I don't know how long I've been doing this, 11 years, in any iteration, whether here on Facebook Live or, kind of when I was doing it just on like YouTube and iTunes and stuff, I always do picks for every single UFC main card. So I'll get an official pick, but early prediction, I would say, is Stephen Thompson. So that was the really big news, of course, coming out of the UFC this afternoon. Also, as fans may or may have seen, if you have a Netflix subscription, the Conor McGregor Notorious documentary has hit Netflix. And if I haven't checked it out personally yet, so I'll have more report next week's show, but just letting everybody know, it's out there. So whether you hate Conor McGregor, whether you like Conor McGregor, whether you're just a fan of MMA in general, I would say it's at least worth checking out. Because if you have Netflix, you can have a lot of cool exclusive stuff, and I'm not sure how else you could watch it other than Netflix. So I would suggest tuning in and just kind of seeing some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that is the life of Notorious Conor McGregor. So I'm very intrigued by that. I'm probably going to take a look this week. Luckily, there's no major fights going on, so I'll be able to give my full attention to the 90-minute documentary with the fighter from Dublin, Ireland. So interested to check out that. We'll get to, like I said, UFC London here in just a minute. So I'm going to come up next with, let's see, one championship. That's right. One championship happened on the 24th, so it happened last weekend. Now, it was on pay-per-view, I guess, for some people. Now, I can't speak to what was available for, like, UK viewers, but at least here in the United States, how it was kind of explained to me, and I saw several people post some messages they had contacting ONE FC. You couldn't buy the pay-per-view on OneFC.com like normal. I think they're looking for a new partner to try to get it like on, Comcast or, a big network, big provider over here, so it could be just, you can send your TV plug in and watch ONE FC on pay-per-view, because normally they had been doing it off their website for about $10. So I think they're trying to change that model, even though I think that's a good model. I think they're trying to get it to a bigger audience. I think they're looking to reach more people, because just put on your website is obviously a kind of a niche within a niche. So if you can put on a big, regular cable television pay-per-view, in, 80 million households or something like that, then that's a big deal. So I think that's kind of what they're looking for. So what they did instead, and I think a lot of people like myself was tuning in to see Gary Tonin, who was making his mixed martial arts debut. So they put the first 4 prelims fights on their Facebook and Twitter, and then I believe just the first 2 main card bouts, which included Gary Tonin's fight, would be streamed on their Twitter. So I thought that was really cool, because that's mainly why I was tuning in. You also add the fact it was, by the time that fight hit, at least here on the East Coast, it was 9:45 in the morning. That's pretty early, at least for me it is. And then obviously if you look at West Coast, obviously like Kayla, who's not with me this afternoon, but that'd be 6:45 for her. That's really early. It's 6:45. So I was glad that they did that for free. They put it on Twitter. I got to see what I wanted to see out of everything, so I thought that was really cool, and that, to me, that's kind of a nice compromise. ONE FC didn't have to do that at all. So I think that was really cool that they did that, first of all. And second of all, I didn't have any problems streaming and everything. The stream was nice. It was high quality, and I think it was really cool. So I'm glad they were able to hook everybody up. And for anyone that did watch, let me know your thoughts on the ONE FC broadcast. I thought it was excellent. But getting to the two main fights, obviously you had Gary Tonin. There's the third issue I want to talk about too. So Gary Tonin took on Richard Cormenal, 4-3. All of his wins were by knockout. Gary Tonin, obviously the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, multi-time EBI champion. He's also done very well. He hasn't won, but done very well at ADCC competitions, No-Gi Worlds, and all that stuff like that, Pan Am Games. So in this fight, obviously, everyone wanted to see how his striking would look. His striking, I thought, looked fantastic. In fact, how this fight really changed was Tonin actually dropping Richard Cormenal. He didn't even shoot for a takedown before he really got him hurt with his standing punches. It was a nice combination. It was a straight followed by an uppercut. Dropped him, then started kind of going in for a takedown later in that first round. Really dominated the rest of that round with some ground and pound. Now, Gary did get tagged in that first round with a straight right. But other than that, didn't really face much opposition from Cormenal. And entering round two, it looked very close for him getting a stoppage finish in round one. But round two just continued with the ground and pound. A lot of people thought with his submission prowess, he would win by submission, but it looked as though Gary Tonin was a man on a mission to win by knockout. So in that second round, he just kept on throwing punches after getting a takedown and maybe passed up some opportunities to finish the fight sooner by submission, but again, wanted to make that point, make that statement that he wanted a knockout. And he got it done officially at 3:40 of round two. The referee had to come in and stop this one as Gary Tonin wins his mixed martial arts debut. And I mean, it was an excellent performance. He obviously did grapple, showed that he can grapple in the cage. That didn't affect him. Showed that he can mix in the ground and pound well. I think he showed that even though it was only one punch, I think he showed that he could take a hit. His conditioning looked great. It never looked like he was in any point of gassing out. And obviously his stand-up looked very good. The only thing I would say he still has to work on is his kicks. He did try a couple of kicks that kind of looked a little, not super awkward, but definitely not as crisp as you would like. But again, for a guy making his first mixed martial arts debut and really first time striking in any sort of professional or amateur or semi-pro fashion, I thought looked really good. So to me, it's only going to get better. And as Gary said in the interview I had with him before this fight, one of the reasons he signed with ONE was because he felt he could get a lot of cage experience and do so very quickly. And in this fight, because of the way ONE FC does weight and stuff, he didn't really have to balloon or get himself really down, really didn't have to dehydrate himself, because even though this was a lightweight bout, I believe it technically how they do their things, it's at like 170 or something like that. Like he doesn't really cut to 55. They kind of do things different. So he should be fine. Like I said, didn't take a lot of damage. So for a guy like him, I would expect maybe a turn. I think they already announced a fight out in May or June for ONE championship. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Gary Tonin have a relatively quick turnaround and do a fight in, say, May or June with ONE. So I'm looking forward to it. I thought it was a very impressive debut, and I'm really interested to see how his career progresses. Also, one thing, it was the fight right before the match with Gary Tonin, but I wanted to talk about Gary first. It was a matchup between Robin Catalan versus Kristina Kongscrichi. I probably said that completely wrong, but in this fight, Catalan picked up Kristina in a suplex-type slam. Slammed him. You could definitely tell it hurt him and looked like it might have impacted the head a little bit. And from that, Robin continued throwing strikes and ended up getting a knockout 1 minute and 40 seconds into round number one. Now, that looked all fine and dandy. It looked completely clean to me. Now, after the fight, ONE FC is claiming they didn't like that slam. And to me, this was I don't agree with this. So they're calling it a disqualification, that he won because he kind of knocked him out with a slam. They don't like slam knockouts and stuff like that, and it looks as though ONE FC is now going to outlaw suplex-style takedowns. I don't like that. The suplex is a staple of wrestling going back to ancient Greek and Roman times, and is still used in wrestling competitions all over the world. So, and obviously in those competitions, you're not allowed to directly slam on the head. Yeah, sometimes injuries happen, but nobody's purposely trying to injure someone, at least you hope not. And I think in this case, I don't think that was the case. I don't think he was purposely trying to knock him out with the slam. You got to look in intent in these sort of things. And to me, Robert Catalan did a suplex slam, and it hurt his opponent from the slam. He finished up with strikes, and to me, he got the victory. I think it was a clean victory. I don't think it was intentional. And again, for his opponent, Kristina, he got in a position where he could get suplexed. Don't get suplexed. I would say the rarity of a knockout slam is very low. This is only the third one I can really recall, and this is only really the first one I've seen off a suplex. The other two were both off of being in guard, lifting, and slamming down. That being Sarah Kaufman against Roxanne Modafferi, and of course the infamous Rampage Jackson against Ricardo and Rona and Pride. So it's not like slam KOs are happening all the time. I would say it's a very low percentage. And I'm just talking at a big stage. I mean, you throw in all, lower level promotions, not just in the United States, England, Canada. It happens, but I don't think it happens so much that you have to make a rule about it. And I think the fact that you're doing it retroactively and you're taking this guy's win away, I think is wrong. This guy should not be disqualified. He went in there and competed. Now, I don't know if they do you show money and win money with ONE FC, but if you're going to take the guy's win away, you should at least give him his win money, because you're now changing the rules after the fact. You got to let that stand. That fight was called by the ref. There was no rule in place not allowing slam KOs. So to me, he won. By the rules in place, he won. You can't go, well, now that looks bad, let's take his win away. To me, that looks bad. For an organization that really wants to protect their fighters and, do this hydration change, and from what I'm seeing, taking care of the fighters, they're not taking care of their fighter right now. I'm going to be very critical of ONE FC right here. Some people may not like that, but I think Robin Catalan should have his sixth victory. It should not be taken away from him. If you want to change the rule now and say from now on we're not going to allow suplex-style takedowns, attentional slam, and all that, fine, do it because you didn't like this move. But don't take away a win from this young man. This man worked months to train hard, to try to get a victory in your cage and entertain the fans. And he did just that. He entertained me and probably entertained millions of more people watching, not just in attendance, but on that broadcast on Facebook and Twitter. And I think it's disingenuous to take a win away from that man. Now, I can be a little more sympathetic if you gave him his win bonus, if you didn't take any money away, but at the end of the day, you're taking away a win from him. And it's not justified because he didn't do anything wrong. He just fought the way that he had to fight. He had an opportunity to suplex a guy, and he did. That's one of the more exciting things in mixed martial arts, is seeing a huge slam. There's nothing more exciting than that, than a big knockout or submission and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons why I watch the sport. That should be other reasons why people watch the sport. So to take a victory away from that guy, I think is a bad move by ONE FC. And what was, I think, overall a great event. You had a great main event, which went wire with two of the best fighters they have on the roster between Bibiano, Fernandes, and Martin Wynn. Martin Wynn trying to become a 3-division champion. He just fell short by split decision. I actually do smell possibly a rematch coming just because Fernandes has been so dominant under the one banner. But I just think it's disingenuous to do that. And I would feel the same way regardless of the organization, whether Bellator did that, whether the UFC did that, whether the organization here in my backyard, WXC, did that. There was no rule in place before, and I just think it's completely wrong to take away a win from him just because you didn't like the slam. Change the rule afterwards, but don't punish the guy for something that was legal when he stepped into the cage last weekend. All right. So as I said, that that main event did go all 5 rounds. I'm going to be honest, I thought Martin Nguyen, obviously being the bigger guy, might have a little bit of advantage. Obviously, Bibiano Fernandes, despite being so dominant, is starting to get a little older now. I know they call him the Flash, but he is 37. So I thought Martin Nguyen, being a bigger guy, coming down, he's on a win streak of himself, might be able to kind of combat Bibiano Fernandes, but just fell out short. Bibiano Fernandes has not lost since 2010, and that was a decision loss to Hiroto Takada back at Dynamite. And I'm trying to see if he has since rematch Hiroki. Let's see. It does not look like it. Before he fought Nguyen, he fought Andrew Leone, who I do know, used to fight for Bellator. I would say, and he did in his only other 2 losses, he lost to, believe it or not, Uriah Faber in his second ever fight. He took on Uriah Faber back in 2006 in King of the Cage. And then he lost a close decision to Kid Yamamoto back at K1, or not Kid Yamamoto. I think this is a different, let me see. Is this Kid Yamamoto? Let me see. No, it is Kid Yamamoto. Okay, all right. Just at the time, the record threw me out. But yeah, and then he lost to Kid Yamamoto. Those were 2 losses back-to-back. So really, since 2007, he's only lost 1 fight, which is pretty insane when you think about it. And he's beaten the likes of Joe Warren, Joaquim Hansen, and now Martin Nguyen, and Masaki Ueda as well. That's a good one. So I would say Martin Nguyen, and also this is the first one. No, he had a split decision win over Reese McLaren back at One Age of Domination. That was in 2006, so possible maybe rematch there. However, I do think with Martin Nguyen, that could be a possible, depending on how the other divisions go. But I think we may see a rematch with that being a close split decision. So we'll see. But good on Bibiano. I mean, I would say the odds were kind of against him taking on a bigger guy, obviously a younger guy too. And, he was able to get the job done and continue his, unbeaten streak here over the last 7 years. So good on Bibiano Fernandes, obviously continuing to be what I would consider a top 5 guy all time to never have fought in the UFC. I would put him on that list. I think he's been that good. I think there was a little bit of a chance when kind of Dream folded. I think Bellator also had some interest in him, but it just never really materialized. And, I don't think that's diminished his career, but I think when people talk about great lightweight fighters, Bibiano Fernandes probably gets overlooked because he hasn't fought, in a major promotion on this side of the world in a very long time. So he's definitely one of the best. The unfortunate thing is if he came over now at 37, people would be like, oh, how come he's losing? He lost 7. It's just different now. I think if he would have came over, right around kind of when he started his one run, which would have been like 2010, 2011, I think we can make a case that he could probably compete with, at that time it was still Dominic Cruz, Uriah Faber, Renan Barao. That was right kind of at the start of the division. I think he would have been a guy to kind of come in and compete. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson was still in the division at that time. I think would have been a nice guy to compete in there, but now we'll kind of never know. I mean, if he wants to come to the UFC, that's fine just to try something new, but I have a feeling he's probably just going to continue on dominating in one, and, it still looks like he wants to fight. It doesn't look like he's showing any signs of really slowing down, even at 37, so I think that's good for one, because they need to kind of help build up stars, and that's definitely, I think, now that, like, Aoki's retired, and obviously Ben Askren has retired as well, they need someone to kind of hang their hat on. I know Martin Nguyen, obviously 2-division champ, was almost going to be a 3-division champ, is still a budding star as well. But I think maybe a rematch might be in place as well, because that was definitely a very close fight. Hey, Miles, thanks for joining the program here, and thanks, James, too. Appreciate you guys checking in here on Beyond the Cage here on MMA World and MMA UK. Again, for everybody, if you haven't done so already, please like MMA World, Facebook.com/MMA World with 2 extra Ds. And then, of course, on Facebook.com/MixedMartialArtsUK to like MMA UK as well. We really appreciate you liking the pages, and of course you'll get the latest and greatest breaking news and articles and shows, interviews, and all that good stuff by liking those pages today. So do it. All right, so that was one championship. Again, that was last week, and like I said, overall, really enjoyed the event. Let's get to Invicta. Was actually this past weekend as well. Invicta 28, that was on UFC Fight Pass. Coming to you live from Salt Lake City, Utah. 9 bouts showed on the streaming platform. A lot of familiar names, especially if you're a fan of the UFC, as Pearl Gonzalez. She took on Callie Robbins. Pearl Gonzalez was able to win. Of course, Gonzalez briefly fought in the UFC for, I believe it was 2 fights? Let me double check that. Yes, 2 fights, taking on Cynthia Calvillo and then Paulina Botello, if I said that correctly, losing both fights. You know, it was actually a great fight, you know, and then she got submitted by Calvillo. No shame in that. And then really looked off against Paulina in her last fight at UFC 216. So obviously kind of going to Invicta to try to regroup herself. Comes away with the win over Robbins, who was undefeated coming into this fight. So, you know, a lot of people might think, well, that might have been a mismatch, and, you know, she had fought in the UFC and stuff. But no, I think that's I think that was a very evenly contested match. She was actually, according to Tapology.com, was actually a slight underdog in this fight, believe it or not. So, gets the job done, gets the win. So very good for her, because I like Pearl Gonzalez. I think she's a very talented fighter, and so glad to see her get back on the winning track. Also, Mallana Juvia was able to defeat Kristina Marks. Also, another former UFC name there. She was on The Ultimate Fighter, Deanna Bennett. She returns to Invicta. This was officially at 127. I don't know if that's what it was scheduled at, or if Bennett missed weight. I'm going to double check on this. No, it says it was listed at 127, so okay. All right, so, because she's fought at 115, that being Bennett, and obviously she was on the 125 version of the Ultimate Fighter for women, crowning the first ever women's flyweight champion, which she did fall short on. But so she returns here back to Invicta. That's kind of where she really started to kind of make her name, taking on, at the time, 6-2 Karina Rodriguez, and was able to eke out a split decision. Again, another fight where you may think, oh, it's a mismatch and everything, but no bones about it. 6-2 was a very solid record. She had won 3 straight fights heading into that, 2 of them by finish and 2 of them under the Invicta banner. So I would say Karina Rodriguez, definitely a very apt opponent for someone coming from the UFC. So, much like I was talking about Pearl Gonzalez earlier. So very nice win for Deanna. And then, of course, we had the main event of the evening as well. That was Inoue, and she was once again battling for the strawweight championship of Invicta, and obviously someone that's trying to get to the UFC. It seemed like she's been on the cusp several times. This fight definitely would have propelled her, taking on Verna Jandrobia out of Brazil, who was 12-0 coming into this fight, was able to win a close fight against Inoue, which seems to kind of just be the bad luck Inoue's had, because she's taken on some very tough girls under the Invicta banner, but just really hasn't seemed to kind of get that one big signature win, in my opinion, to really kind of propel her to, the next level. Obviously, she debuted in Invicta against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, lost a split decision. Then she takes on, and then Kowalkiewicz moves to the UFC. Then at Invicta 11, she takes on Alessa Grasso, loses to Grasso. Grasso again eventually goes on to win that fight, move on to the UFC. Then she returns. She takes a couple fight with Deep and some Shuto boxing back in her native Japan. Then she returns to Invicta at Invicta 15, defeats Lacey Shuckman, has a win at Jewel, or Deep Jewels, I should say, and then comes back at Invicta 18, beats Lynn Alvarez. Had a couple of bouts get scrapped between that win against Lynn Alvarez and this fight here in Invicta 21. Officially, she was supposed to take on Janissa Moradin at Invicta 26, which was December of last year. It said Inoue withdrew. Then actually for this event, it said she was supposed to take on Mallana Juvia. So obviously that got scrapped. So they ended up having her fight for the vacant strawweight title against Verna Jobrana. And of course, as I mentioned, Juvia ended up having another fight anyway. So it all worked out for both parties involved. But for Inoue, just kind of hasn't quite been able to get over that hump. And this is a fight where I guess you could say a little bit of a short notice kind of fighting for the title. But I think it's a fight and someone, despite coming in 12-0, someone she definitely could have beat, just fell a little bit short once again. So at this point, in no way, I'm not saying there's no shot she gets to the UFC, because she's still, believe it or not, only 23 years old. But she's going to have to kind of get one of those big wins if she wants to get to the UFC. I just think that, especially at 115, I think that's, even with the addition of 125, some of those 115ers have moved up. But 115 is still, I think you can make a case, the strongest division of the women's division, so it's not easy getting in there. So I would say she still has a lot of fights left in her. She's still very young, but she's going to need one of those big victories to kind of get her over the hump. I'm not sure when or if that'll happen, but it's just something she's going to need to know, because obviously a lot of these close fights against high-level girls, she's just not getting the win. And I just kind of read off she's kind of had a career of losing close fights, so I think this fight should be a little bit of an eye-opener, to be like, this was her chance to kind of really put herself as the top of Invicta's division, to really say, hey, I'm knocking on really legitimately knocking on the door of the UFC, and wasn't able to do it. So I think she's really going to have to look at what can she do different to get these decisions, to turn them in her favor, because right now it just hasn't quite gone her way so far. All right, before I get to UFC London, a little bit about Glory 52. That's coming up this weekend on UFC Fight Pass as well as ESPN. Super excited about Glory 52. Features the main event of Robin van Roosmalen against Kevin Van Nostrand for the Featherweight Championship of Glory. Going to be an excellent fight. Van Nostrand is a guy that, for lack of a better term, is balls to the wall. He goes for it. He's very exciting. He's very fast. He's a fast starter. He's flying. He's in your face. He's trying flying kicks, Superman punches, flying knees. This guy puts the pressure on you, and he's going for the knockout. He's swinging for home runs. However, you look at the average fight time. He's a quick starter. He's a quick finisher. Robin van Roosmalen, very much, he is a pressure fighter, but not. He pressures it into corners. He presses you with output. He's very good at not taking a lot of damage. He's very good at countering, figuring out your angles, and walking out, and doing so for a complete 15-minute fight. In fact, his average fight time in Glory is 10:40. That's double what Kevin Van Nostrand has for his average fight. This is just specifically in Glory, but I doubt it's that much different if you look at their fights within other organizations. So that, to me, is the big deal. When this thing gets into the third, the fourth, the fifth, will Van Nostrand still be able to have that same explosiveness that he shows in the first two rounds? Because I'm not sure. Because Robin van Roosmalen, I don't think has ever been finished. He's 15-3 in his career. Oh, this is just Glory. He's 15-3 in Glory with 4 knockouts, and overall in his career 39-7. I don't think he's been finished. At least he's never been finished in Glory, that's for sure. So that's something to really look out for. The longer this fight goes, the more it favors Robin van Roosmalen. So that's why I think this is such an intriguing matchup. And I really like Robin van Roosmalen. He's a very good technician. I'm excited to see him defend the title. And I think Van Nostrand is a guy that definitely is going to give him a heck of a fight. And I think those first 6 minutes, those first 2 rounds, are really what you got to keep your eye on. Because Van Nostrand, he can knock anyone down. Look at the knockdown ratio in Glory, 4-1. So to 12-4, I don't know why they put 12-4. That's really a 3-1, I think. Anyways, all right, but the knockdown ratio is very good for Van Nostrand. So that's something to look out for. 17-1 overall. This is his first chance. It's going to be exciting. I've never seen a boring Kevin Van Nostrand fight, and his last fight was absolutely insane, where he got knocked down and then countered immediately, all within like 30 seconds. So this is going to be really fun. We're going to see whether Van Nostrand is ready to fight with the elite guys, and Romeo Usman is pound for pound, you maybe right up there with his fellow Dutchman Enrico Verhoeven as the best two fighters in Glory. He's been that dominant. He had the loss there to Sidichai, but I still think a trilogy is going to happen at some point, especially with the way Sidichai just dominated in his last fight. I think if Robin can get by Van Nostrand, I think we should get a trilogy between Sidichai and Van Roosmalen here coming up sometime later this summer. So I think that's intriguing to watch too, to see if Van Roosmalen wins, what happens next for him. Also, former middleweight champion Simon Marcus. He's going to be taking on an American by the name of Zach Wells, who's 4-0 in his career. I'm going to be honest, this would be a major upset if somehow Zach Wells can beat, 47-4-2 Simon Marcus, the former champion. I don't know if Wells is like filling in for somebody or something, but boy, talk about kind of being thrown to the wolves here. I feel bad for Zach Wells. You got to fight Simon Marcus, so good luck to you, Mr. Wells. You got a very tough first fight in Glory. Second fight in Glory, but first, major event. This is only your fifth fight and taking on, the former two-time middleweight champion, a guy who was undefeated for like 10 years. And good luck. Speaking of middleweight divisions, and a lot of people, if you're intrigued, if you're mainly a UFC fan, Chris Camozzi. He's going to be kickboxing here, his second kickboxing bout under the Glory banner. He's going to be taking on a guy that has this will be his 10th Glory fight. He's 19-5 overall in Glory kickboxing, that being Mike Lemire. He's been kind of one of the stalwarts, kind of gatekeepers of Glory's middleweight division. So I think this is a very nice test for Chris Camozzi, who really just dominated in his debut last December in Madison Square Garden, or the theater at Madison Square Garden for Glory. So I'm really looking forward to it, to see him taking on, obviously, a guy I would consider, top 10 in Glory. So I think this is a very nice test for Chris Camozzi, and for Lemire, like a guy that's kind of been, win-loss, 4-5 so far in Glory. If he can beat Chris Camozzi, even though it's his second professional kickboxing bout, that's a big deal. That really helps kind of push Lemire up the rankings. Middleweight at one time was maybe the deepest division Glory had. Now, with Joe Schilling and them getting rid of Artem Levin, Simon Marcus, is lost, is not as deep as, I'm not saying that there's nobody good, because obviously Alex Pereira is an amazing champion. He had a great win against Belgari, but they still are kind of a little short on contenders. So if Mike Lemire can pull off what I would consider actually a little bit of an upset, despite having more kickboxing experience, that really pushes him in possible talk of maybe getting a title shot. But for Camozzi, I'm going to be honest, I think if he gets by Mike Lemire, I think you can kind of fast-track him a little bit to the title, to be honest. But we'll see. I'm excited for that, too. And then we get Josh Johnsey also on the card, the Canadian fighter, very entertaining fighter. So excited to see him fight as well. Then on the Super Fight Series, we're going to get Pavel Zurov. He's going to be taking on American Myron Dennis. This is going to be in the light heavyweight division. So that should be pretty exciting. I really like Zuralov. He's a really good fighter, very entertaining, definitely goes for the knockout, very big and strong and powerful guy. He's fought a lot of heavyweight too, but at 205, very powerful guy. Excited for that. And then the women's champion here, Anissa Meksen, of course, she's coming off winning the Glory Super Bantamweight Championship over Tiffany Van Soest. That was back at Glory 48. She's going to be taking on Ashley Nichols here at Glory 52. That's going to be in a non-title bout. So that's kind of intriguing. And then she actually has a title bout scheduled for Glory's next event, Glory 53, on May 12th. She's taking on Emile Debbie, who fought Van Soest in the inaugural title fight, which was a very close fight. So going to be taking on a stiff competition in her next fight. However, I don't like the fight that they've already booked Meksen's title defense, and in between there's a non-title fight, because if Meksen loses or gets hurt, that kind of messes things up. So I don't like that. Just wait till she wins or wait till she's clear to go, then book the fight. I don't like that. Glory's done that a few times now with a few of their stars, and for them, luckily it hasn't really burned them, and you can make a case, well, if they lost that fight, it probably wasn't going to be in the main event. Yes, I get that, but just for the safety of your fighters, I don't like that. I don't like any fighting organization booking 2 fights in a row. Don't do that. Just book 1 fight at a time, all right? Because anything can go wrong in this sport very easily, so don't do that. But we'll see if it works out. Anyways, very excited to see Mexen back in action because I thought she did have a great performance and win over Van Soest in what was a very close fight last year. So, all right, let's get to UFC London here. 4 fights were shown on the main card as part of the Fight Pass broadcast, but I was able to watch every single fight there. I thought we had some great performances on the undercard, a lot of finishes on the undercard. Of course, Danny Roberts had a very good knockout over Oliver Enkamp. Enkamp, obviously, a lot of people are talking about him kind of as maybe like the next kind of Wonder Boy Thompson, kind of comes with that karate style, but Danny Roberts was able to land a knockout. I think very impressive over a highly touted young up-and-comer guy like Enkamp, so hats off to Danny Roberts knocking him out 2-12 in the first round. We also had Dmitry Sinovsky take on Mark Godbeer. I thought looked really good. I mean, the thing I noticed, he did that lateral drop takedown twice, perfect technique. You could tell was a little better of a grappler, and eventually kind of wore Godbeer down, got that submission, that rear naked choke in at 4:29 in round 2. So I thought a very good performance by Sinovsky winning in this fight. Then a lot of people, like myself, were watching for the Stevie Ray Cajun Johnson fight as part of the prelims. Cajun's very much, you could tell, is a tri-star fighter, very much a point fighter, likes to strike on the outside. Stevie Ray was moving forward, but that style, I think, kind of held him back from throwing as much as he would have liked to. He did have, I think, was the closest fighter to coming to stopping this fight. And I would have gave the first round to Cajun. I think the next 2 I probably would have gave to Stevie Ray. I could see how the judges maybe gave one of those to Cajun. Kind of goes down split decision, but kind of like Stevie said after the fight, I don't really care for that style. I get that's what he does to win a fight. I respect him, but that's not how I like to fight. And I kind of agree. I didn't think there was really anything in that fight Cajun did to really hurt Stevie Ray. I don't think there's anything Cajun did that I would say was close to finishing the fight, either by knockout or submission. And I think other than landing kind of some pitter-patter shots, I don't think was really even controlling the pace of the fight. So while I kind of see you can maybe kind of work 2 rounds, I like to add in the damage aspect, the close to the finishing aspect. So to me, I think Stevie Ray got, I'm not saying 100% robbed, but I think probably should have had that fight. Also, Danny Henry with a very nice, very quick guillotine submission there of Hakeem Dawodo. So very nice win for him. And then, of course, really the fight kind of everybody was talking about here. Paul Craig against Magomed Aniklov. Again, talk about young up-and-coming guys. A lot of people are talking about Enkamp, but he already, of course, had debuted in the UFC. But another guy from Dagestan, everyone was talking about this kid, saying, oh, nobody wants to fight this guy. This guy's an animal. He's been UFC ready for a while, and, they finally brought him over. Talking on the broadcast with John and Dan, talking about this guy's record. I think it was like 13 and, it was 9-0 coming into this fight. And, Paul Craig's, 9-2, 9-3, but, who knows? I don't know if he's ready for this guy's grappling aspect and stuff. And I'm going to be honest, Paul Craig was definitely losing this fight. They actually put out on the scorecards that Paul Craig was losing, other than his, first win against Henrique da Silva, which he was able to win by armbar, 2 fights in a row where he got knocked out, but against guys that are really good knockout artists in Khalil Roundtree and Tyson Pedro. So coming against Anklev, you would say with his prowess, everyone talking about him, despite being in the UK, Paul Craig being from Scotland, you thought, I don't know, maybe Paul Craig is, he's catching him at the right time, but he pulled it off. They said, he had 3 triangle choke submissions coming into this. That's something that obviously he works on, has a very good technique with. And Anklev, he had this fight. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He probably was going to win an easy 30-27, maybe even a 30-26 thrown in there. And I'm not going to say let up his guard, but you got to keep fighting until the end. And maybe got a little bit sloppy, didn't think that anything was going to happen to him, and with good reason. I mean, he's sitting there pounding him his head into the cage there, and there's like 15 seconds left. You hear the clap, you think, all right, I just keep punching him in the face. I either get a stoppage or the round ends. You maybe kind of let your guard down a little bit because, at 10 seconds you think, he's not going to knock me out, he's not going to submit me. Paul Craig, they said he has the triangle choke. I mean, last-ditch effort, pulls it off, locks it in. And really for the man from Dagestan, I don't know if he didn't hear the clappers, but it's almost like you hear the clappers, the submission goes on. All he had to do was hold on. Because if the round expires still in the submission, even if you say he lost that round, which I don't still think even with a near submission you would, he was going to win. He just had to hold on for one more second. The only way the ref may give it is if you're completely passed out and you're just like, maybe then the ref would kind of retroactively give the tap or something. But if he could have just held on for one more second, so he had to know, unless he just wasn't paying attention, he had that much of a tunnel vision that he didn't even hear the clappers. And if that's so, that's just poor awareness by the man from Dagestan in Russia. So definitely a learning experience. And while, yes, Paul Craig did the victory, he should know that he still has a lot of things to work on because he definitely got dominated in this fight. And for Ankalaev, it shows that you got to fight all the way to the final bell. And when you hear the 10-second clapper, just you got to be able to hear that and have the wherewithal mind to know that you only have 10 seconds left, and that if you get caught in a submission, to just hold on because you're going to win, or the round's going to end. You're not going to have to worry about losing. So for his first fight in the UFC, overall pretty good, but that's got to be really disappointing. And I hope that he's able to come back from this and realize and just really take this as a learning experience, because he's going to be back in the UFC. He obviously proved he has a lot of talent, and I don't think should hold his head super low or anything like that. But it's just one of those things where if you were just a little more aware, you could have got yourself a victory and stayed undefeated. That's all I'm saying. But good on the Bear Jew for fighting until the very end, because that's true spirit. A lot of people would have just gave up, wouldn't have even tried to throw up a triangle choke knowing that this ain't going to work. But you got to give a lot of credit to Paul Craig, because his back was kind of up against the wall, literally and figuratively, because if he would have lost that fight, that would have been his third straight loss in a fight where he really looked outclassed, probably would have got cut. All of a sudden, he gets a submission victory, 1 second away, gets a performance of the night bonus, and probably gets to keep his job for a few more fights, at least within the UFC. All right. Also, let's see, anything else? Oh, Charles Boyd had a nice rear naked choke finish over John Phillips. Did I miss anything? Nope. Okay, then we move on to the main card. Excellent performance, Leon Edwards against Peter Sobota. I picked Leon Edwards to win. I thought that he has done a very good job adjusting into a guy that can sprawl and brawl. And if it was that type of fight, I think Sobota didn't have the stand-up skills to hang with Leon Edwards, and I think that was very apparent. Even in the ground game, I thought Edwards on top never really looked in danger to getting submitted by Sobota. I think Sobota actually, to me, was kind of gassed by the end of this first round. I think he was trying so hard to get a takedown, adding in, getting hit in the face, very hard from Edwards. I just think entering that second round, I really don't think he had a whole lot left, and was kind of just doing everything he could to get to the ground, because he realized, like, that's my only effort. If I can maybe create a scramble, maybe I can get a submission on this guy. But I think Leon Edwards at this stage of his career has just gotten so much better at the grappling game that I think desperate takedowns and desperate scrambles, especially when you're tired, weren't going to work. So I thought, and Leon Edwards obviously ended up getting a rear naked choke. This was a very nice, ended up getting a knockout, but I think he actually did threaten with some submissions too. And I thought I thought he just kind of slowly, methodically broke Peter Sobota down. And while Sabota's, maybe not the best guy in the world, he's definitely a guy that can cause you problems with his grappling. And I think this is a nice win for Leon Edwards. This is definitely a guy you have to get past if you want to fight in the, at the elite level. And, after starting in the UFC 2-2 for his first 4 fights, to me, he has since gone on and has looked absolutely fantastic, winning 5 in a row and beating good guys. I mean, he's beaten Dominic Waters, Albert Tumanov, Vincente Luque, Brian Barberena, and now finishing Peter Sobota. I think Leon Edwards is ready for a top 15 guy. I think he's really looked well. Two of those 5 fights in the wins have been finishes. The other 3 have been unanimous decisions, so it's not like he's just getting by guys. He's beating guys and doing so with no question that he's the victor. So I would say that Leon Edwards is ready for a top 15. I haven't seen any rankings, but I wouldn't even be surprised if we see him in the top 15. I thought this was a fantastic performance and a very great way to kick off the card, and he was able to get a finish as well. So I think a very good performance by Leon Edwards. I think right now he's on a very good roll, and I'm very interested to see who he takes on next, because I think he's starting to put together a very well-rounded game. All right, Tom Duquesne against Terrion Ware. Another fight where Tom Duquesne wasn't able to put the guy away in the first round. Fight where you could definitely tell faded as this fight went on. And a fight where I think, unlike his Cody Stamann fight, maybe kind of a little bit of a twist of fate. I think, you could make a case that, he maybe could have won that, but, didn't. This time is another fight where I don't think he probably should have won. I mean, he got outstruck by 38 strikes. Not only that, Terrion Ware threw 150 more strikes than him. Also, Duquesne was 0 for 3 on his takedowns, so 2 for 6 for Terrion Ware. I'm gonna be honest. I think other than that I think the third round was close. If you look at that, Terrion Ware did have a slight takedown, 25-23, slight striking edge for Terrion Ware. I think that round was close. I think round 2 was definitely Terrion Ware. In my opinion, I thought maybe hurt Duquesne a little bit. Round 1, despite outstriking Duquesne by 8, I think Duquesne did have the more powerful strikes in the first round. So I would have gave Duquesne round 1, Ware round 2. Like I said, round 3 was close, but I think it would have gave it to Ware, because you look at the striking numbers even, but Ware had the takedown. So a little bit of a robbery, a little bit, and I feel bad for Terrion Ware because he's had 3 fights now, 3 close decisions. He had the loss against Cody Stamann, he had the loss against Sean O'Malley, now this loss against Duquesne. Unfortunately, he's probably going to get cut, but I mean, he's fought really close, and I would really say even the Cody Stamann fight I think was close. The Sean O'Malley fight, I think he definitely lost. I think that's fair, but this fight, Duquesne again kind of faded. If he can't put you away in the first round. He's taking on better guys now in the UFC. He's struggling putting guys away. They mentioned on the broadcast that he's fought at 45 and 35. Maybe a move up will help his conditioning, because right now, bantamweight is a very good division. Not to say featherweight isn't, but bantamweight is very deep, and lower weights usually lower knockouts. So if you're relying on putting away guys in the first round at bantamweight, I'm not sure if that's a great strategy. It's not really a division that's built up on guys just knocking dudes out in 30 seconds. So if I was Duquesne, you either got to switch up the way you're doing the weight cut, or maybe moving up to 45 might help you, because it's definitely been a noticeable fade after the first round in his last 2 fights. And I think he's lucky that he was able to get a victory in one of those 2 fights. And for Terrion Ware, I mean, I thought you fought a good fight, man. I thought you fought good enough to win. You kind of just got the short end of the stick. I hope the UFC realized. I think they should bring you back for one more. I mean, if you get cut, you get cut. But I think you should have won that fight. All right, Jan Blachowicz against Jimmy Manawa, a rematch from these two from a few years ago, in which I believe. Let me double check here. I believe Jimmy Manawa won the first time around. That was, again, one of the worst fights you'll probably ever see. Going back to their April 2015 fight in Poland, just an awful fight. But Jimmy Manawa, was able to get the win this time around. Complete 180. This was a very entertaining fight. And despite Manawa only landing 37 strikes, he had a chance to finish this thing, finish this fight, but Blachowicz was somehow still able to come forward. And really after that kind of initial burst by Manawa early on in this fight, to me, Blachowicz really took over, and did a great job of just not getting hit and just seeing the strikes coming from Manawa. I mean, Manawa only landed 37 strikes in a 15-minute fight. That's two a minute. That's not going to get the job done. Whereas you look at Jan Blachowicz hit 124 times. And this is what we needed. I kind of said in the fight, will we see both guys kind of kick up the intensity knowing just how bad that first fight was? And that's exactly what we got. Both guys kicked it up. Both guys were going for the finish. Both guys, somehow threw the kitchen sink at each other and they still didn't go down. This was just a fantastic fight. And I think overall, a really good fight for Jan Blachowicz, because not only did he win, he showed improved striking, improved output, I thought better conditioning, and also he took a punch, kept on going, and then was able to shut Jimmy Manawa out. I mean, after that initial, I believe it was in the first round where it looked close to getting finished, I thought Blachowicz just shut Manawa down, was avoiding just about everything Manawa was flowing because the timing was starting to get slower. His kicks, his punches were racking up. He even mixed in a takedown late there in round 3 to really kind of seal the deal, in my opinion, and get this victory. And this was a very nice win for Jan Blachowicz. To me, he was kind of always, I talk about Mizoki and Uri, kind of always looking kind of for that signature victory. Hadn't really got it. Anytime he'd take on a guy, near the top, other than his UFC debut, finishing Ilir Latifi, which you can kind of go, well, Latifi maybe wasn't quite what he was now, which is fair. Again, that was 4 years ago. He lost to Jimmy Manuwa the first time. He lost to Corey Anderson. He lost to Alexander Gustafsson. He lost to Patrick Cummins. But now, seeming to find himself here in 2017 and now into 2018 with two bonuses, a fight of the night with this fight, which deservingly so, and a performance of the night bonus and his finished victory over Devin Clark. He also had the win over Jared Cannonier. Now this win with Jimmy Manawa. Things are starting to turn around here for the Polishman, Jan Blachowicz, and very great performance. And, for Jimmy Manawa, obviously, we all know he's getting a little bit older now. He's going to be 38 years old. He's lost 2 fights in a row. Of course, he had the quick knockout loss to Volkan Ozdemir, which, again, Volkan has no time. We all know this. And now the loss to Blachowicz. And really, it was I don't think he was ever really able to fully recover, from after that second round, kind of with the beating, and you could tell his shots were labored. But, I wouldn't say Manawa has to go completely back to the drawing board or completely change up his game, but, just got beat that night. Just didn't quite have the condition to kind of keep up that pace and really come back from the damage Blachowicz was putting on him. So just minor adjustments, I would say, for Jimmy Manawa. I think by no means is he done in this division. I just think it was a really good performance by Blachowicz there, and very deserving of the fight of the night bonus, and a very great fight overall. Really enjoyed that one, and glad that it was just something that was actually watchable, unlike their first fight. All right, getting to the main event of the evening, Fabricio Werdum against Alexander Volkov. First round went pretty much how I thought it would be. Obviously, Fabricio Werdum going with that takedown very early, was able to get a takedown not once but twice. Even though Volkov did outstrike him, I think very much Fabricio Werdum controlled that round. Definitely would have gave round 1 to Fabricio. Round 2, more of the same. Only one takedown, but I think in that round, the couple times it was standing, coupled with the first round, you definitely could tell Volkov was the better striker. And even though I think Werdum is a very apt striker, I think that he put so much emphasis on trying to take Volkov down, knowing that Volkov does not have the jiu-jitsu skills that I do. And also, I just think from a range standpoint, it was just going to be better if he could get inside to go for a takedown than try to trade shots with the Russian Volkov. So I think he just put so much emphasis. I think by the time this fight got to the third round, he got touched up a few times. His eye was swollen. I think his conditioning, I think, was maybe starting to go because he had, even though Volkov's not big, he's really tall. And that leverage he creates makes him a tougher guy to take down. So in that third round, I think is really when we saw this fight turn, as Werdum was 0 for 4 on his takedowns. And I think that's when Volkov was very much like, if he can't take me down, I can pick him apart and just wait for my shots, because I don't think he really wants to strike with me. And I think that was apparent. And then round 4, how the knockout happened was Werdum trying to go in for a takedown, catching in with short shots, and he put him away. And I thought that, even though Werdum had early success, the one thing was, I said this in the fight, he only needs one takedown to win, but the thing is he never really got off great ground and pound. He never really threatened with a very close submission. Volkov did a good enough job to mitigate damage, make sure Verdum didn't get in too dominant a position. He didn't make sure he put any limb or neck out there that Verdum could easily submit him. And I thought really did a good job of just kind of waiting for his opportunities, knowing that taking people down is tough. Breaking the guard is tough. Even though he's a high-level guy, a lot of those things do spend a lot of energy in MMA. So I think Volkov knew, all right, if I can get this thing longer, it's going to be harder for him to take me down. It's going to be harder for him to stay on top of me. The submission is going to be harder to get when you're tired, and I can use that advantage to then land some of those combos that I'm capable of because he still has to come into my range to take him down. I can hit him before he really even starts the level change. So Volkov, I thought, just had a great strategy, knowing, all right, again, this is one thing I always like fighters to kind of admit. He had to admit, Fabricio Verdum's probably going to take me down in this fight. And it's not so much, will I get taken down? It's when I'm going to get taken down and what I can do from that. And I thought Volkov did that game plan to a T. Like I said, mitigated the damage, didn't really allow Verdum to get in a dominant position or really get off on his ground and pound, waited for his opportunities knowing that he has such a good range, he's so confident in his striking that even Verdum wanted to strike, it was going to be 50-50, maybe even 60-40 in favor of Volkov. Then with the opportunity, you could tell Verdum was getting tired, was really just kind of forcing the issue more than he have to. He wasn't setting up the takedowns with strikes, which makes the takedowns easier to see from, especially when you already have the range advantage like Volkov did, and caught him with the knockout. And while, yes, it's shocking, yes, I did pick Verdum to win, seeing how this fight went, it then wasn't shocking. It was shocking before to say Verdum, that Volkov's going to win, and he's going to win by knockout, and he's going to do so in the fourth round. So, but as this fight went on, you kind of started to see what Volkov was going to do, and the fact that Volkov wasn't being put in precarious positions like we thought would happen to him. That's why I picked Verdum to win. So I thought this was a very nice win for Volkov. He now completely changes up the heavyweight division. I would say, I don't know if he gets a title shot right away. Maybe he gets one more squeeze in there. Of course, Overeem's still out there. Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis, I think would be kind of a tremendous fight too. So I think maybe you give Volkov one more fight, and if he gets by, one of those guys that I named, I think a title shot in his future is very much a possibility. And I think you could give him a shot now, but obviously we know there's going to be a big champ versus champ fight coming up this summer. So I think because of that, we may see Volkov take one more, and I think it's okay to give him one more too. But Volkov to be definitely proved that he's an elite fighter, and has looked nothing but fantastic. I mean, he's now 4-0 in the UFC. He's beaten two, and three of them you would say are guys that are better grapplers than him. Tim Johnson, Roy Nelson, and Fabricio Verdum. He's beaten them all, and he's finished his last two fights in great fashion, both earning a bonus, knocking out Stefan Struve and now beating Fabricio Verdum. So, I would say, wow, yeah, you could make a case that you give him one more shot, but, at 30-6 in his career, 4-0 in the UFC, and finishing a former champion and one of the best to ever do it in the heavyweight division of Fabricio Verdum, I would feel fine with giving him the next heavyweight title shot. But with the timing, I could also see him taking on one of the guys I just mentioned, Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Overeem, and Ngannou as well. So, all right, that's my show for this week. Thanks, everybody, for joining in and commenting below. Appreciate everybody. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. You can also check me out on Instagram at TheJimGraham. Please follow us here, MMA World, on Facebook, facebook.com/MMA World with 2 extra Ds at the end. That's also our same handle on Twitter and Instagram. And then, of course, our sister page, MMA UK, is facebook.com/MixedMartialArtsUK. And then on Twitter and Instagram at We Are MMA UK. So, thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'll see you next week for another edition of Beyond the Cage. Goodbye, everybody.